Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, in Surah Al-Dukhan, chapter number 41, verse number 11. Moreover, he comprehended in his design the sky when it was smoke. And he said to it and to the earth, come together willingly or unwillingly. And they said, we come together in willing obedience. The scientists, they talk about the space outside the astronomical system. And they say it was in the form of smoke. And the Arabic word used in the glorious Quran, Surah Al-Dukhan, chapter number 41, verse number 11, it is the word Dukhan. So the scientists, they say that the space outside the astronomical system, it was in the form of gas. And the word used in Surah Al-Dukhan, chapter number 41, verse number 11, it is Dukhan in Arabic, and in English, it is smoke. And today, after science has advanced, the scientists, they tell us that the word smoke, it is more appropriate as compared to gas, because at that time it was hot. So previously they said that the initial celestial matter of the universe, it was in the form of gas. This was discovered by certain scientists. And then later on, after science has advanced, we have come to know that the word that is used in the glorious Quran, it is smoke, and it is more close and more scientific as compared to gas, because at that time it was hot. Imagine the glorious Quran talks about the initial celestial matter of the universe, that it was in the form of smoke 1400 years ago, which science has discovered it recently. Furthermore, previously, human beings thought that the earth, it was flat. It was in 1577 where Sir Francis Drake, he traveled around the earth and he proved that the earth was spherical. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, in Surah Al-Luqman, chapter number 31, verse number 29, أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ يُولِجُ اللَّيْلَ فِي النَّهَارِ وَيُولِجُ النَّهَارَ فِي اللَّيْلِ. Do you not see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala merges the night into the day and the day into the night? Now this process of merging, it is a gradual process. If the earth was flat, there would be a sudden change. But this gradual process is only possible if the shape of the earth is not flat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in the glorious Quran in Surah Al-Zumar, chapter number 39, verse number 5, that it is Allah who overlaps, it is Allah who coils the night into day and day into night. The Arabic word used over here in Surah Al-Zumar, chapter number 39, verse number 5, it is yukawwir, from the word kawara, which means to coil something. Like how you coil a turban or you overlap a turban. So this process of coiling, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the process of changing the night into day and day into night, it is a gradual process, which indicates the shape of the earth being spherical. And the shape of the earth cannot be flat. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in the glorious Quran, in Surah Al-Nazi'at, chapter number 79, verse number 30, وَالْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ دَحَاهَا. Thereafter he has made the earth as an expanse. From these verses of the glorious Quran, we understand that the shape of the earth, it is spherical and it is not flat. So who could have mentioned this in the glorious Quran 1400 years ago, which science has discovered it recently? Furthermore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, in Surah Al-Furqan, chapter number 25, verse number 61, تبارك الذي جعل في السماء بروجا وجعل فيها سراجا وقمرا منيرا. Blessed is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has placed in the sky constellations and placed therein sun having its own light and moon having borrowed light. The Arabic word for the word sun, it is shams, and its light is described as siraj, wahaj or diya, meaning blazing lamp or something that has a light of its own. The light of the moon in the glorious Quran, it is described as nur or munir. which means reflected light or borrowed light. Nowhere does the glorious Quran say that the light of the moon, it is its own light. And regarding the star, the Arabic word used is najm, and it is of piercing bright, it is of piercing darkness. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions regarding the light of the moon, it being described as nur or munir, that is borrowed light or reflected light. This is mentioned in the glorious Quran in several places, including Suratul Nuh, chapter number 71, verse number 15 and 16, as well as Surah Yunus, chapter number 10, verse number 5. A group of scientists, European scientists, previously they believed that the earth was the center of the solar system. And the planets and the sun, they revolved around the earth. And this was called as geocentrism. And this was believed till the time of Ptolemy. It was later on in 1512, Nicholas Copernicus, he came up with the theory known as the heliocentric theory. The heliocentric theory, and he said that the sun is the center of the solar system and all the planets, including the earth, revolve around the sun. And later on, Johannes Kepler, in 1609, he wrote in his book, which is called as Astronomia Nova. And he said that the planets, as well as the earth, besides revolving around the sun, they even rotate about their own axis. Previously, long time back, what we were taught in school, that the sun, it is stationary, it does not rotate about its own axis. But now we know that the sun, it rotates about its own axis. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions regarding the sun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, in Surah Al-Anbiya, chapter number 21, verse number 33. هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارَ. It is Allah who has created the night and the day. وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ. The sun and the moon. كُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ. Each one traveling in its own orbit with its own motion. The Arabic word yasbahun, it is derived from the root word sabaha. What does the word sabaha mean? If I use the word sabaha for an object that is in air or in space, it would not mean that it is flying, but it would mean that it is moving in its own motion. So similarly, when the word yasbahun is used to describe the movement of the sun, it refers to it moving in its own motion. And we know regarding the sun that if we look at the sun directly, we will get blind. It is harmful. But if we use an instrument and if we take the image of a sun on a tabletop, we will see that there are black spots on the sun. And these black spots, they approximately take 24 to 25 days to complete one rotation, indicating that the rotation of the sun takes approximately 24 to 25 days. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, in Surah Al-Yasin, chapter number 36, verse number 40, لَلشَّمْسُ يَنْبَغِي لَهَا أَن تُدْرِكَ الْقَمَرَ وَلَا اللَّيْلُ سَابِقُ النَّهَارِ وَكُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ. It is not permitted for the sun to outstrip the moon, nor for the night to overtake the day. Each one is moving in its own orbit with its own motion. So from this verse of the glorious Quran, what do we understand? The scientists, what do they tell us? They tell us that the sun, it moves in a particular direction in the universe to a particular fixed direction, which is known as the solar apex. In the constellation of Hercules, also known as Alpha Lyra, at a speed of 12 miles per second. So it moves to a particular fixed direction. And the sunlight that we have today, it is due to a chemical reaction that is taking place since billions of years. And this chemical reaction, one day it will cease to exist, so will life on earth cease to exist. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, in Surah Al-Yasin, chapter number 36, verse number 38, لَلشَّمْسُ يَنْبَغِي لَهَا أَن تُدْرِكَ الْقَمَرَ وَلَا اللَّيْلُ سَابِقُ النَّهَارِ وَكُلٌّ فِي فَلْكٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Yasin, chapter number 36, verse number 38, وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا. And the sun, it moves in a particular path. The Arabic word used here is mustaqar. What does mustaqar mean? The word mustaqar, it has got two meanings. One is place determined and one is period determined. The sun moves in a particular direction and regarding it moving for a particular time period. The sunlight, it will remain for a particular time period. So two meanings of the Arabic word mustaqar: place determined and period determined. And we know that the sun, as I mentioned earlier, and the scientists mentioned regarding this, that the sun, it moves in a particular direction in the universe to a particular fixed path known as the solar apex. And this matches the meaning of the word mustaqar, that is place determined. Now, as far as the second meaning of the word mustaqar, period determined, even this, it matches as per modern science. We know the sunlight that we have, it is due to a chemical reaction that is taking place since billions of years. And the sunlight, it will cease to exist after a particular time period. So both meanings of the word mustaqar, they are in perfect conformity with science, with modern science. So the glorious Quran mentions regarding this 1400 years ago, which science has discovered it recently. There are several other scientific facts that are mentioned in the glorious Quran. For example, previously in school, we learned that there are only three states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. Later on, the scientists, they discovered regarding the space outside the astronomical system, and they called it as vacuum. And later on, the scientists, they discovered and they tell us that there are bridges of matter inside the interstellar space, and it is not vacuum but rather it is plasma. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, Surah Al-Furqan, chapter 25, verse 59, that it is Allah who has created the heavens and the earth and things that are in between them, which refers to as things in between, beyond the heavens and the earth, and things in between the heavens and the earth, which refers to as plasma, which science has discovered it recently. So several scientific facts that are mentioned in the glorious Quran, which science has discovered it recently. And furthermore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, Surah Al-Anbiya, chapter number 21, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Anbiya, chapter number 21, verse number 32, that we have made the sky as a protective ceiling. وَجَعَلْنَا السَّمَاءَ سَقْفًا مَحْفُوظًا. We have made the sky as a protective ceiling. And we know the atmosphere that we have today, it acts as a protection. It protects the harmful rays, the ultraviolet rays and the harmful rays from reaching the earth. Without the atmosphere, life would cease to exist on the earth. So it acts as a protective ceiling in order to prevent the harmful rays from reaching the earth. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions regarding the sky acting as a protective ceiling in Surah Al-Anbiya, chapter number 21, verse number 32. So the glorious Quran mentions regarding this 1400 years ago, which science has discovered it recently. In 1925, a famous scientist and astronomer by the name of Edwin Hubble, he mentioned regarding the expanding universe. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, in Surah Al-Dhariyat, chapter 51, verse 47, regarding the expanding universe. And this was discovered by Edwin Hubble in 1925. And the glorious Quran mentions regarding the expanding universe 1400 years ago, which science has discovered it recently. In the field of physics, we know regarding the theory of atomism that regarding atomism, that the scientists they discovered that atom, it is the smallest particle of matter. And in Arabic, the word is used as dharra. And even the Arabs, they believed in this, that atom, it is the smallest particle of matter. But later on, after science has advanced, we have come to know that even though atom, it is the smallest particle of matter, and previously it was thought that it could not be divided, now we have come to know that even an atom can be divided. So does that mean that the glorious Quran is outdated? Let us see what the glorious Quran talks about this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, in Surah Al-Sabah, chapter number 34, verse number 3. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, as well as in Surah Al-Yunus, chapter number 10, verse number 61. وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَا تَأْتِينَ السَّاعَةِ. That the unbelievers, they say that the hour will not come to them. Say, it will surely come to you, in whose knowledge is there. لا يعزب عن ربك من مثقال ذرة في السماوات ولا في الأرض. In whose knowledge is the minutest detail. لا يعزب عن ربك من مثقال ذرة في السماوات ولا في الأرض ولا أصغر من ذلك ولا أكبر إلا في كتاب مبين. And the smallest detail, and the word dharra is used here regarding the atom. And anything that is greater and smaller than the atom, except that it is in His knowledge. So in this verse of the glorious Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that everything is in His knowledge. Things greater and smaller than the atom. Imagine the glorious Quran mentions regarding this 1400 years ago, which science has discovered it recently. Now many people, they might argue and they may say that Arabs, they were very good in the field of astronomy. Let me remind you that it was after the revelation of the glorious Quran that Arabs, they became good in the field of astronomy and not the vice versa. And it was because of the glorious Quran that Arabs, they became good in the field of astronomy. So it is because of the glorious Quran, the Arabs, they are good in the field of astronomy. Furthermore, in the field of hydrology, we know regarding the water cycle. And the first person who discovered regarding the water cycle, it was Sir Bernard Palissy. In 1580, he discovered regarding the water cycle. And he mentioned regarding the water cycle that the water, it evaporates from the oceans, it forms into clouds. The clouds, they rise, they condense, and water falls, and the water cycle is replenished. So we know regarding the water cycle, and we learn it in school. But previously, what did human beings believe regarding the water cycle? In the 7th century, a person by the name of Thales of Miletus, he said, and he came up with the theory that it is due to the spray of the ocean which fell into the interior as rain. So this is what was thought before, that it is due to the spray of the ocean which fell into the interior as rain. So previously it was believed that it is the spray of the ocean which caused rainfall. And people, they did not know regarding the underground water. And they thought that the water, it passed through a secret passage which forced it into the interior, through a secret passage which was called as Tartarus. And they believed that the pressure of the wind on the water which forced it into the interior. They did not know regarding the underground water. Today we know the underground water, it is due to the seepage of the rainwater. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions regarding the water cycle in Surah Zumur, chapter number 39, verse number 21. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who sends down water from the sky, and He causes the earth to soak the water, and He brings forth from its springs, and He brings sown seeds of various colors to grow. Furthermore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, Surah Rum, chapter number 30, verse number 24, it is we, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, it is we who send down water from the sky, and we give life to the earth after it is dead. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Mu'minun, chapter number 23, verse number 18, that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who sends down water from the sky. And it is we who send down water from the sky, and we can store it and we can drain it easily. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, Surah Al-Hijr, chapter 15, verse number 22, we cause the fecundating winds. The Arabic word lawaq is used here, which refers to fecundating winds. The winds, they impregnate. And we know the pollen, it is picked up by the winds and it impregnates the clouds, and then there's rainfall. And the second way is wherein the clouds, they join together and there is thunder and rain falls from the sky. So several places in the glorious Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks regarding the water cycle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in the glorious Quran, Surah An-Nur, chapter 24, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions regarding the water cycle. Surah An-Nur, chapter 24, verse 43, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks regarding the water cycle. That it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who sends down water from the skies. And they form into clouds. The clouds move, the clouds rise, the clouds move, they form into a heap, and then water falls from the sky. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks regarding the water cycle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also talks regarding the water cycle in Surah Ar-Rum, chapter number 30, verse number 48, as well as in Surah Tariq, chapter number 86, verse number 11. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An-Nur, chapter number 24, verse number 43, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the clouds. They appear as heaps. They are like heaps. And when we travel in a plane, when we look down, we can see the clouds. They look like mountains of wool. In several places in the glorious Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the water cycle in great detail. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, Surah Al-Araf, chapter number 7, verse number 57, in Surah Al-Ra'd, chapter number 13, verse number 17, in Surah Al-Furqan, chapter number 25, verse number 48 and 49, in Surah Al-Yasin, chapter number 36, verse number 34, in Surah Al-Fatir, chapter number 35, verse number 9, in Surah Al-Qaf, chapter number 50, verse number 9 and 10, in Surah Al-Mulk, chapter number 67, verse number 30, in Surah Al-Waqiyah, chapter number 56, verse number 67 to 70. You can go on and on giving references wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the water cycle in great detail. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the water cycle in great detail 1400 years ago, which science has discovered it recently, a few hundred years back. In the field of geology, we know regarding the radius of the earth that it is 3,750 miles approximately. And when you keep going deep down, it keeps getting hot because there's a lot of fluid. And as you keep on coming superficially, it keeps getting cooler. And the superficial crust on which we live in, it is hardly 30 miles in thickness. And the geologists, they tell us that this superficial surface, it is thin. And the geologists, they talk about the folding phenomena, which gives rise to the mountain ranges. And what is the purpose of the mountain ranges? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran in Surah An-Naba, chapter number 78, verse number 6 and 7. Wal jibala autada. The mountains, they are like stakes. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the mountains, they are like stakes, like tent pegs, like how you put a tent peg. And the surface of the mountain, what we see, the top of the mountain, it is only a part of the mountain. The mountain, it has roots deep down inside. So what we see On top, it is like the tip of an iceberg. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, Surah Al-Naziyah, chapter number 79, verse number 32, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed on the earth mountains standing firmly. The folding phenomena which I mentioned, it gives rise to the mountain ranges, and the mountain ranges, they give stability to the earth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed on the earth mountains so that they will give stability to the earth, and so that they prevent the earth from shaking. So from these verses of the glorious Quran, we clearly understand the purpose of the mountains, that they have been placed on the earth so that they give stability to the earth. Furthermore, in the field of oceanology, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran that we have let two bodies of water flow, one sweet and palatable and the other salty and bitter. Though they meet, yet they do not mix. There's a barrier between them which is forbidden to be trespassed. And this is mentioned in the glorious Quran, Surah Al-Rahman, chapter number 55, verse number 19 and 20, regarding the barzakh, the barrier between them which is forbidden to be trespassed. Now the Mufassirin, they could not understand this verse of the glorious Quran referring to the barzakh, a barrier between the water. And today, after science has advanced, we have come to know regarding this phenomenon that is present in certain parts of the world. That one part of the water is sweet and palatable and the other salty and bitter. Though they meet, yet they do not mix. There's a barrier between them which is forbidden to be trespassed. And this barrier can be seen in Cape Point, in Cape Town, the southernmost tip of Africa. And it can also be seen in the river Nile, when it flows into the Mediterranean Sea. So we can see the two types of water. And if you take one type of water and put it into the other, it will homogenize and lose its constituents. So this can be seen with the naked eye. And you can even see the difference in the color of the water. The color differs, and one is sweet and palatable and the other is salty and bitter. So the glorious Quran mentions regarding this 1400 years ago, which science has discovered it recently. In the field of biology, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, the verse I quoted at the beginning of my talk, from Surah Al-Anbiya, chapter number 21, verse number 30. أَوَلَمْ يَرَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَنَّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ كَانَتَا رَتْقًا فَفَتَقْنَاهُمَا وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ أَفَلَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. That do not the unbelievers see that the heavens and the earth, they were together and we clove them asunder. And in the last part of the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيًّا أَفَلَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. And we created every living thing from water. Do they not then believe? Imagine in the deserts of Arabia, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning that every living thing is made from water. And we know today every living thing contains cytoplasm, which contains 50 to 90% of water. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, Surah An-Nur, chapter number 24, verse number 54, that we have created every animal from water. Furthermore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Furqan, chapter number 25, that we have created the human being from water. So from these verses of the glorious Quran, we come to know that living things have been made from water. And the glorious Quran mentions regarding this 1400 years ago, which science has discovered it recently.